August 1st, 2012, 9:30 a.m. The New York Stock Exchange opens for the day. Within seconds, something strange starts happening in the market. Stocks are moving, fast, erratically, in ways that don't make sense. Prices spiking. Volumes exploding. Trades executing at a rate nobody has seen before. On the trading floor and in offices across Wall Street, people start noticing. Something is wrong. At Knight Capital Group, one of the largest trading firms in America, responsible for roughly 10% of all stock trading, phones start ringing. Alerts start firing. Engineers start scrambling. For 45 minutes, nobody can stop it. When it's over, Knight Capital has lost $440 million. The company that had taken decades to build is effectively over. Not because of a market crash. Not because of fraud. Not because of a bad bet. Because of a piece of code that nobody had properly retired. 9 years ago. To understand what happened, you need to understand what Knight Capital was. By 2012, Knight Capital Group was a giant. It handled more trading volume in US stocks than any other firm. Billions of dollars every single day, millions of trades, moving through their systems at speeds measured in milliseconds. They weren't a bank. They weren't a hedge fund. They were a market maker, a firm that sits between buyers and sellers, providing liquidity, executing trades, taking tiny profits on millions of transactions per day. Their edge was technology. Specifically, a system called SMARS, the Smart Market Access Routing System. An algorithmic router that received large orders, broke them into smaller pieces, and sent them to exchanges at the right moment to get the best price. It was sophisticated. It was fast. And it contained something nobody remembered was there. Knight Capital stops using a piece of functionality in SMARS called PowerPeg. PowerPeg was a real routing feature, not a test, not a prototype. It was part of the live system. When Knight used it, a function counted the shares being executed and told the system to stop sending orders once the parent order was fully filled. A throttle. A stop mechanism. In 2003, Knight discontinued using PowerPeg. But they did not remove the code from SMARS. It stayed in the system, unused, but present. Then, in 2005, Knight made a change. They moved the cumulative quantity function, that stop mechanism, to an earlier point in the SMARS code sequence. A restructuring, a refactor. What they did not do. Retest PowerPeg after moving that function. They did not check whether PowerPeg would still work correctly if it was ever called again. So now the dormant code had a hidden flaw. Its stop mechanism had been quietly disconnected. If PowerPeg was ever activated, it would no longer know when to stop. Nobody knew this. Nobody tested it. Nobody was thinking about PowerPeg at all. It hadn't been used in years. In 2012, the New York Stock Exchange announced a new program, the Retail Liquidity Program. For Knight to participate, they needed to deploy new code to SMARS. Their plan: replace the old PowerPeg code with the new RLP code. Repropose the configuration flag that had been used to activate PowerPeg and use it instead to activate the new RLP routing. Clean in theory. The old code would be gone. The new code would take its place. The deployment was scheduled across the last week of July. 8 servers needed to be updated manually by a senior technician, one by one. There was no automated verification to confirm each server had been correctly updated. No second technician required to sign off. No written procedure requiring a review. The technician updated 7 of the 8 servers correctly. The 8th server was missed. On 7 servers. The new RLP code. Power peg gone. Working as intended. On 1 server. The old power peg code still present, with its stop mechanism disconnected since 2005, and the configuration flag now repurposed to call it. Nobody at night realized that the power peg code had not been removed from the 8th server, nor the new RLP code added. The market opens. SMARS begins routing orders across all 8 servers, including the ones still running the defective power peg code. Orders sent to the 8th server triggered power peg, which no longer had a stop mechanism, which had no way of knowing when a parent order was filled, which just kept sending child orders. Buying again, over and over, without limit. The 7 servers that received the new code processed orders correctly. The 8th did not. Before the market opened, Knight's internal system had automatically generated 97 email alerts identifying an error described as power peg disabled. These alerts went to a group of Knight personnel, but were not designed to be treated as high-priority system alerts. Nobody stopped the deployment. By the time people on the floor realized what was happening, the system had been running for minutes. The defective orders were entering a live system alongside correctly processed traffic, while Knight's monitoring tools failed to provide a clear picture of the firm's growing exposure. Then came the decision that made everything worse. Knight's team identified the problem. The 8th server. The defective power peg code. They decided to act. They uninstalled the new RLP code from the 7 servers where it had been deployed correctly. This worsened the problem. Removing the RLP code from those 7 servers caused the same configuration flag, now pointing back at the old power peg code which was still present on all 8 servers, to activate power peg everywhere. What had been 1 defective server was now 8. According to the SECS findings, SMARS sent millions of child orders resulting in 4 million executions in 154 stocks for more than 397 million shares in approximately 45 minutes. Knight inadvertently accumulated approximately $3.5 billion in unwanted long positions and $3.15 billion in unwanted short positions. Knight publicly reported a $440 million pre-tax loss. On August 5th, the company raised around $400 million from investors in an attempt to stay in business. It wasn't enough to save Knight's independence. In December 2012, just 4 months after the incident, Getco LLC agreed to acquire Knight Capital. The Knight Capital name eventually disappeared entirely. A company built over decades, handling more stock trades than anyone else in America. Gone in 45 minutes. The SECS investigation found multiple failures stacked on top of each other. The unretired code, the untested restructuring from 2005, the manual deployment with no verification, the alerts that went unread, the response that spread the problem instead of containing it. The SEC noted specifically that Knight had no written code development and deployment procedures for SMARS, did not require a second technician to review deployments, and had no written protocol for managing unused code sitting in production systems. No single person had decided to destroy the company. No one had been reckless or malicious. Every individual decision had a reasonable justification at the time it was made. Here's what I want you to sit with. In 2003, someone decided not to remove PowerPeg from the codebase when it was discontinued. Reasonable. Removal takes effort. The code was dormant. It wasn't causing any problems. In 2005, someone moved the stop mechanism to an earlier point in the code sequence and did not retest PowerPeg afterward. Reasonable. PowerPeg wasn't being used, so retesting it did not appear urgent. In 2012, Someone chose to repurpose the power peg flag for the new RLP feature, on the assumption that the old code was effectively gone. Reasonable, they were replacing it. That was the plan. Someone deployed to 8 servers manually with no automated verification and no required second review. Standard procedure, they had done it before. A technician missed 1 server out of 8. Human error. It happens. Someone, during the crisis, removed the new code from the 7 correct servers. Reasonable under pressure, they were trying to contain the problem. Each of these decisions, alone. Defensible. Normal. The kind of thing that happens in technology companies every day. But stacked together, over 9 years, they built a structure where 1 missed server on 1 morning could activate dormant code whose stop mechanism had been silently broken 7 years earlier, and drain a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars before anyone could intervene. This is what the Knight Capital story is actually about. Not bad code. Not a rogue algorithm. Not one catastrophic mistake. 9 years of reasonable decisions, each one adding a small amount of brittleness to a system that was handling billions of dollars a day, until the morning when all that brittleness arrived at once. $440 million. 45 minutes. A chain of decisions nobody added up until it was too late. Small causes. Massive consequences.